The Vampire King raised his hand to incinerate the crippled child who'd interrupted his blood banquet, until the boy pointed at the glowing dragon blood seal in his palm and whispered, "My mom has that exact same mark." For the first time in 100 years, the immortal king's power flickered and died, because that mark only existed on 3 people in history: himself, his brother who betrayed him, and the wife he watched burn alive 10 years ago. When they found the boy's mother scrubbing floors in the servants' quarters with the royal seal burned into her arm, the king realized his entire family had been alive this whole time, and the brother who stole them was coming to finish the job. That single, impossible statement would unravel a decade of lies and ignite a war for the throne. We're about to show you everything, so make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on, because you are not going to want to miss a single second of what happens next. A child limped into the throne room during the Feast of Shadows, somewhere a servant's son had no right to be. The sound of dragging footsteps echoed against polished obsidian as he clutched a battered orange toy truck. He walked past uniformed guards, past nobles in midnight silks, straight to the dais where the Vampire King sat upon his throne of blackstone and gold. Silver hair flowed over his shoulders, a dark crown glinted with rubies, and his blood-red eyes fixed on the intruder. The Vampire King raised his hand. Crimson energy swirled in his palm, the ancient dragon blood seal manifesting as lethal power. The temperature dropped. Frost crept along the floor. But the boy didn't run. He pointed his finger at the glowing orb. "Sir, my mom has a mark just like yours." The red energy flickered. Died. For the first time in a century, the immortal king felt fear. Not of death. Fear of hope. "What did you just say?" the Vampire King whispered. The boy shifted his weight. "My mom has a mark on her arm. It glows red sometimes." "It looks exactly like that." The Vampire King's hand trembled. "Your mother is a servant here?" "She works in the scullery. Her name is Mara." The name struck like a physical blow. The royal consort was supposed to be dead. The child she'd carried gone. He'd searched for years, burned cities looking for them. But this boy, the shadows bent toward him. The enchanted flames burned brighter in his presence. The gargoyle statues had turned their stone heads to track him. "Bring me the maid named Mara," the Vampire King commanded. "Now." Minutes later, a woman in a stained kitchen dress stumbled into the hall. Older, thinner, but unmistakable. "Get away from my son," she snarled, lunging forward before guards caught her. "Mom, it's okay," the boy Elian said calmly. The Vampire King descended the steps. "Show me your arm." With shaking hands, Mara pushed up her sleeve. There, beneath burned scars, was the dragon blood seal. When the Vampire King touched it with his own marked hand, both seals flared brilliant red. Power exploded through the room, shattering chandeliers, blowing out windows. Mara screamed as memories flooded back: a wedding, a crown, a silver-haired king, fire and blood, and running through corridors clutching a newborn. She collapsed. The Vampire King caught her. "I've got you," he murmured. He looked at Elian and saw his own crimson eyes faintly reflected, the royal bone structure beneath youth's softness. "She will be okay," the Vampire King said. "You both will be." He lifted Mara and addressed the court. "Everyone out. Now." When they were alone, Elian asked, "Are you my father?" "Yes," the Vampire King whispered. "Yes, I am." Elian held up his toy truck. "Does that mean I'm a prince?" Despite everything, the Vampire King's mouth twitched. "Yes." "Cool. Do princes get better trucks?" For the first time in a century, the Vampire King laughed. The royal healers arrived within the hour, 3 ancient vampires in white robes marked with silver runes. They examined Mara first, confirming the memory magic that had shattered her identity. Then they turned to Elian. "The boy," the lead healer said carefully. "May we examine him, Your Majesty?" The Vampire King nodded from where he stood guard over Mara's sleeping form. Elian sat on an examination table, swinging his uneven legs. The healer's hands glowed as they passed them over his small frame. Their expressions shifted from clinical interest to shock. "This is unprecedented," the eldest healer breathed. "Explain," the Vampire King demanded. "The child's legs aren't crippled by deformity, Your Majesty. They're being crushed." "By what?" "By power." The healer's eyes were wide. "There's magic inside him, immense, ancient magic, trying to manifest. But his body is too young, too mortal. It's like trying to contain dragonfire in a paper lantern." The Vampire King moved closer. "He's in pain. Constant pain. Every step is agony. The magic is suppressing itself to keep from destroying him, but the pressure." The healer shook his head. "Most would have died in infancy." Elian looked up at the Vampire King. "Is that why I'm broken?" Something shattered in the Vampire King's expression. He knelt before his son. "You're not broken. You're holding back something powerful. Something that makes you stronger than anyone in this citadel. Even you. Especially me." The healer cleared his throat. There may be a way to help him adapt, to gradually release the pressure. But it will take time. The citadel shuddered. Every torch in the room flared bright red simultaneously. The ancient wards carved into the walls began to glow, activation runes lighting up in sequence. "What's happening?" Mara sat up, disoriented. The Vampire King's expression went cold. "The citadel's defenses. They only activate for..." He looked at Elian. The boy had climbed down from the table and was standing in the center of the room. He wasn't doing anything, just standing there with his toy truck. But the castle recognized him as the true heir and was protecting him. "Impossible," one healer whispered. "He hasn't been formally acknowledged." "Blood doesn't need formality," the Vampire King said quietly. "It knows." 300 miles away, in a fortress of bone and shadow, Keaton the Exiled gasped as the resonance hit him like a blade. The dragon blood seal. Active. Connected. The cursed child lived. He'd twisted the infant's magic in the womb, ensuring it would slowly poison him from within. The boy should have died before his 5th year. But somehow he'd survived, and worse, the seal recognized him. Keaton smiled coldly and turned to his assembled commanders. "Gather the army. We march on Nightborn." "My lord," one dared to ask, "is it wise to attack now?" "The citadel's defenses are meaningless." Keaton's eyes blazed. "My brother has found his lost family. He'll be distracted, emotional, weak." He drew his blade. "We finish what we started 10 years ago. This time, no one survives." The commanders bowed and scattered to mobilize the forces. Keaton walked to the window overlooking the wasteland. In the distance, he could just see the lights of the Nightborn citadel. "Enjoy your reunion, brother," he murmured. "It will be brief." He raised his own palm, where a corrupted version of the dragon blood seal pulsed with sickly green light. The siege would begin at dawn. And this time, he would make sure the Broken Prince stayed broken permanently. The royal family had one night to prepare for a war that would determine whether hope could survive, or whether the darkness would consume them all. Mara awoke in a room she didn't recognize. Silk sheets, not rough wool. A canopy bed carved with dragons, not a servant's cot. Moonlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire kingdom. She sat up, her heart racing. The last thing she remembered was the throne room, the glowing mark, the explosion of memories that had felt like drowning. "You're safe," a voice said from the shadows. The Vampire King stepped into the moonlight. He'd removed his crown, and his silver hair fell loose around his shoulders. Without the throne room's dramatic lighting, he looked tired. Ancient and tired. "Where's Elian?" Mara demanded. "Sleeping in the adjacent chamber. Under guard." He moved closer, careful, as if approaching a wounded animal. "Do you remember anything?" Mara looked down at her hands. They were clean for the first time in years, the kitchen burns and scars still visible but freshly bandaged. "I remember, fragments." "A wedding?" "No, that's impossible. I'm a scullery maid. I've always been." You've been a prisoner, the Vampire King interrupted quietly. A prisoner in your own mind. He gestured to a wardrobe against the wall. Open it. Mara's legs shook as she crossed the room. When she pulled the wardrobe doors open, she gasped. Gowns. Dozens of them. Crimson silk, midnight velvet, silver brocade. Warrior's leathers with the royal crest. A crown resting on a cushion, delicate and deadly, forged from white gold and blood rubies. Her hand reached out without permission, fingers brushing against a particular dress, deep red with black embroidery. The moment she touched it, the world tilted. She was standing by these same windows, heavily pregnant, wearing this exact dress. The Vampire King's arms wrapped around her from behind, his hands gentle on her swollen belly. What if I'm not strong enough? She'd asked. You commanded an army before you could walk, he'd murmured against her hair. You'll be fine. I meant for motherhood. Then we'll figure it out together. The vision shattered. Mara stumbled back, tears streaming down her face. That was real, she whispered. We were. My consort, the Vampire King said. My wife. My partner in ruling this kingdom. His voice cracked. And someone took you from me. Mara looked at him, truly looked, and felt something ancient stir in her chest. Muscle memory. Her body knew how to stand near him, how to angle herself so they moved as one unit. Fighter's instinct from battles fought side by side. Elian, she breathed. In the memory, I was pregnant. That means, he's our son. And he's been suffering because of magic my brother used to curse him before birth. The tears stopped. Something cold and sharp replaced them. Your brother did this? Keaton. He tried to kill us all 10 years ago. He failed, but he managed to take you, wipe your memories, and plant you back in the Citadel where I'd never think to look. The Vampire King's eyes blazed crimson. He made you a servant in your own home. Mara's hands curled into fists. The dragon blood seal on her arm began to glow faintly. Where is he? The wastelands. But not for long. The Vampire King moved to the window. The Citadel's defenses activated tonight. He'll have felt it. He'll know Elian survived. He'll come for us. Yes. Mara walked to stand beside him. Side by side, just like in the memory. Good. Let him come. The Vampire King looked at her, surprise flickering across his features. I may not remember everything yet, Mara said quietly, but I remember enough. And I remember this. She held up her marked arm. This mark isn't just for show. Is it? No, the Vampire King said. It means you were blooded into the royal line. It means you have access to the same power I do. Then teach me how to use it again. Her eyes hardened. Because no one hurts my son and lives. For the first time since the throne room, the Vampire King smiled. Not a sad smile. A dangerous one. There's my queen, he murmured. Elian couldn't sleep. The bed was too soft, the room too big, and his legs ached worse than usual. He slipped out from under the silk covers, grabbed his toy truck, and limped to the door. The guards posted outside immediately knelt. Young prince. I'm just exploring, Elian said. Is that okay? The guards exchanged glances. The Citadel is safe for you, my lord. The wards recognize your blood. But perhaps an escort. I'll be fine. Before they could argue, Elian wandered down the corridor. His uneven footsteps echoed against marble, but unlike in the servants' quarters where people had sneered at his limp, here the sound felt right. Like the castle was listening. He passed a suit of ancient armor. As he walked by, the helmet turned slightly, tracking his movement. Elian stopped. Looked up at it. Hello. The armor said nothing, but he could swear it nodded. Fascinated, he continued. A tapestry rippled though there was no breeze. A chandelier's crystals chimed softly, like a greeting. When he stumbled, a shadow seemed to solidify just enough to steady him before dissolving back into darkness. You're all magic, Elian breathed. And you're protecting me. He reached a grand staircase leading to the lower levels. Carved into the stone pillars on either side were massive gargoyles, winged beasts with fangs and claws, frozen mid-snarl. Elian had seen them earlier and they'd terrified him. But now, up close, he noticed something. They weren't snarling at him. They were snarling outward, protecting what was behind them. Protecting him. "Were you here when I was born?" he asked the stone creatures. The gargoyle's eyes, just carved stone, seemed to gleam red for a moment. Elian sat down on the steps, suddenly exhausted. His legs throbbed. He set down his toy truck and rubbed his aching calves. "The healers said I'm not really crippled," he told the gargoyles. "They said there's power inside me that's too big for my body, that it's crushing me from the inside." He looked at his small hands. "I don't feel powerful. I just feel broken." A sound echoed from below, footsteps. Heavy boots? A patrol, maybe. But the gargoyle's stone muscles tensed. The shadows in the stairwell grew darker. The Vampire King appeared at the top of the stairs, moving with supernatural speed. "Elian, step back." "What's wrong?" The Citadel's wards detected an intrusion. Something got past the outer defenses. His eyes scanned the darkness below. Something that shouldn't be possible unless... An arrow shot up from the shadows, aimed directly at Elian's chest. The Vampire King moved to intercept, but he was 3 steps too far away. The gargoyle moved faster. Stone cracked and exploded as the carved beast tore free from its pillar. It lunged in front of Elian, and the arrow shattered against its chest. The gargoyle roared an impossible sound from a stone throat and launched itself down the stairs toward the attacker. Elian sat frozen, his toy truck clutched to his chest. The Vampire King reached him, pulling him close. "Are you hurt?" The gargoyle, it moved. "It saved me." The Citadel has guardians bound into its structure. They activate only for the royal bloodline. The Vampire King's expression was grim. "Which means my brother's agents are already inside." Below, sounds of combat, stones smashing bone, screams cut short. Then silence. The gargoyle climbed back up the stairs, its stone body cracked but intact. It resumed its position on the pillar, freezing once more into immobility. But a single crack ran down its chest where the arrow had struck, a scar earned protecting the young prince. Elian reached out and touched the damaged stone. "Thank you." The gargoyle's eyes glowed red once more, then faded. The Vampire King lifted Elian into his arms. "We need to move you to the sanctuary. If assassins breached this far, the siege has already begun." As they hurried back through the corridors, Elian noticed something. His legs hurt less when his father carried him. The crushing pressure the healers described felt lighter. "Father," he said quietly, "when you're close, the pain isn't as bad." The Vampire King's arms tightened around him. "The magic recognizes its source. Being near me helps stabilize it. Then I should stay with you. You need to be somewhere safe." "I'm safest with you," Elian insisted. "The castle knows it. That's why everything protects me. Because I belong here." He looked up at his father. "With you." The Vampire King stopped walking. He looked down at this small, broken, impossible child who'd somehow survived a decade of suffering meant to kill him. "Yes," he said finally. "You do." The sanctuary was a fortified chamber deep in the Citadel's heart, protected by wards older than the kingdom itself. The Vampire King set Elian down gently on a cushioned bench, while Mara paced like a caged wolf, her newfound warrior instincts warring with 10 years of servant submission. "How many attackers?" she demanded. "Theron's patrols have eliminated 12 so far," the Vampire King replied. "But they're just scouts. Testing our defenses. The real army won't arrive until..." A massive explosion rocked the Citadel. Dust rained from the ceiling. The wards on the walls flared bright, absorbing the impact. Until now, the Vampire King finished grimly. Elian clutched his toy truck, watching his father move to the observation window. The Vampire King stood there, backlit by the red glow of siege fire, his silver hair seeming to float in an ethereal wind. He looked like a painting. like something carved from marble and moonlight, beautiful, untouchable, and utterly alone. Elian slipped off the bench and limped over. He tugged on his father's dark sleeve. The Vampire King looked down, surprised. Without a word, Elian held up his toy truck, the battered, missing thing that had been his only companion through years of pain and isolation. "Do you want to play?" Elian asked. The Vampire King stared at the toy. At this absurd, broken plastic thing being offered in the middle of a siege. Then he did something he hadn't done in a century. He sat down on the floor. Elian's face lit up. He settled beside his father, careful of his aching legs, and began rolling the truck back and forth. "It doesn't roll right because of the missing wheel," Elian explained seriously. "So you have to push it like this." He demonstrated. "And sometimes it falls over, but that's okay. You just pick it up and keep going." The Vampire King watched the orange truck wobble across the marble. "You've had this a long time?" "Mom got it for me when I was little. From the market." Elian's voice softened. "It was the only toy I ever had. The other kids used to make fun of it. Said it was garbage." "It's not garbage." "I know. It's mine." Elian rolled it toward his father. "Now it's yours too, if you want." The Vampire King caught the truck. His hands that had commanded armies, signed death warrants, wielded magic powerful enough to level cities, trembled as they closed around the cheap plastic. "Elian," he said quietly, "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For not finding you sooner. For not being there when you were suffering. For every moment you spent believing you were just a servant's broken son instead of a prince." Elian considered this. "It wasn't your fault. Mom said someone did magic to make her forget. That means they made you forget too, kind of. You can't find someone if you don't remember to look." The simple logic hit harder than any accusation could have. "You're 10 years old," the Vampire King said. "You should be playing in gardens, learning to ride horses, being a child. Instead, you're trapped in a sanctuary while an army tries to kill you." "I was already being killed," Elian pointed out. "The healers said the magic was crushing me. At least now I know why. And I have you." He leaned against his father's arm. "That makes it better." The Vampire King wrapped his arm around his son, pulling him close. "When this is over, when I've burned my brother's army to ash, I'm going to give you everything. A whole room of toys. Teachers for whatever you want to learn. Healers to help your body adapt to the power. Time. Safety. Childhood." That quiet moment between a father and son, a bond forged in the middle of a war, it's the reason we tell these stories. If this moment got to you, let me know in the comments what you think of their connection so far. And if you want to be part of a community that appreciates these powerful emotions, make sure you're subscribed. "Can I keep this truck though?" "Of course." "Good." Elian yawned. "Because it's special. Like me." The Vampire King looked down at his son, at this child who'd survived the unsurvivable, who'd limped into a throne room full of monsters and declared a truth that shattered a decade of lies, who'd turned his curse into something he wore with pride. "Yes," he murmured. "Exactly like you." Another explosion. Closer this time. Mara crossed to them. "They've breached the outer walls." The Vampire King carefully moved Elian back to the bench, tucking the truck into his hands. "Stay here. The wards will hold. You're going to fight." "Yes." Elian looked at his mother, who'd strapped on leather armor that fit her perfectly despite not remembering she'd ever worn it. Then at his father, whose eyes had gone from crimson to something darker. Something ancient and terrible. "Be careful," Elian said. "Both of you." The Vampire King knelt and kissed his son's forehead. "I didn't survive a century of war to lose you now. I'll come back." "Promise?" "I promise." As his parents moved toward the door, warriors ready for battle, Elian called out, "Father." The Vampire King turned. "When I get bigger and the magic doesn't hurt anymore, will you teach me to fight too?" A fierce pride blazed across the Vampire King's face. "It would be my honor." Then he and Mara swept from the room, leaving Elian alone with the glowing wards and the sound of war drums in the distance. Elian looked at his toy truck, rolled it back and forth. Just pick it up and keep going, he whispered to himself. Outside, the siege intensified, and the Vampire King prepared to show his brother exactly what happened to those who threatened his family. The siege of Nightborn had begun, but what Keaton didn't know was that the Broken Prince and the Forgotten Queen were broken no longer. The throne room windows exploded inward as catapult stones smashed through the ancient glass. The Vampire King stood at the center of the chaos, his silver hair whipping in the wind, crimson energy crackling around both hands. How many? He demanded. Commander Theron appeared from the shadows, blood splattered across his uniform. 300 soldiers at the main gate. Another 100 scaling the eastern wall. They're using blood magic to corrode the wards. Keaton's work. The Vampire King's eyes blazed. He always was skilled at corruption. Mara emerged from the armory, twin blades strapped to her back. The weapons had called to her the moment she'd touched them, muscle memory overriding 10 years of forgetting. Where do you need me? The Vampire King looked at her, and something passed between them. A recognition deeper than memory. The Eastern Wall. Take half the guard. If they breach there, they'll have a direct path to the sanctuary. Talion. Yes. Mara's grip tightened on her blades. They won't get through. She vanished with supernatural speed, and the Vampire King allowed himself one moment of gratitude that she was on his side. Then he turned to face the shattered windows as dark shapes began pouring through. The enemy wore black armor etched with sickly green runes, Keaton's corrupted version of the Dragonblood seal. They moved like vampires, but smelled wrong, like rot and dark magic. Bloodbound, the Vampire King spat. He's using forbidden rituals. The first wave attacked. The Vampire King met them with devastating power. Crimson energy exploded from his palms, incinerating 3 soldiers instantly. He moved like death itself, each gesture precise and lethal. Blood painted the marble floor. But more kept coming. On the eastern wall, Mara fought like the warrior she'd been born to be. Her blades sang through the air, finding throats and hearts with deadly accuracy. The guards fighting beside her stared in awe. The queen lives, one breathed. The legends were true. A blood-bound soldier lunged at her. Mara sidestepped, drove her blade through his spine, and kicked the body off the wall in one fluid motion. Less talking, more fighting. But even as they cut down attackers, more scaled the walls. Blood magic ate through the ancient wards like acid. Mara could see the protective runes flickering, failing. In the throne room, the Vampire King decimated another wave. Bodies littered the floor. But he was breathing hard now, power draining faster than it should. Theron appeared at his side. Your Majesty, we can't hold all positions. We need to fall back, consolidate defenses around the sanctuary. If we fall back, they'll overrun the citadel. If we don't, we'll be overwhelmed anyway. Theron blocked an incoming blade. You need to conserve your strength for Keaton. You know he's coming. The Vampire King knew Theron was right. This siege was just the appetizer. His brother wanted him exhausted before their inevitable confrontation. Sound the retreat, he ordered. Everyone to the inner sanctum. The horn blast echoed through the citadel. Mara heard it on the eastern wall and swore. Fall back. Fighting retreat. They began withdrawing, step by bloody step, toward the citadel's heart. Toward the sanctuary where Elian waited. High above the battle, standing on a distant cliff, Keaton watched through a scrying orb. His corrupted dragonblood seal pulsed with green light. Run, brother, he murmured. Gather your little family in one convenient location. It will make killing you all so much more efficient. He raised his hand, and the largest catapult launched a boulder wrapped in dark magic directly at the sanctuary's outer wall. The impact threw Elian from the bench. He hit the floor hard, his toy truck skittering away across the marble. The sanctuary's wards flared brilliant white, absorbing most of the blast, but cracks spider-webbed across the walls. Elian scrambled up, ignoring the pain shooting through his legs. Mom? Father? No answer. Only the sound of stone grinding and distant screams. He limped to the door and tried the handle. Locked from the outside. Safe, his father had said. Protected. Another impact. The wards flickered. Trapped, Elian realized. He was trapped. His breathing quickened. The walls seemed to close in. He'd spent years trapped in a weak body, trapped in the servants' quarters, trapped in a life where he never belonged. The crushing pressure in his legs intensified. The magic the healers had described began to push harder, as if responding to his panic. "Stop," he gasped. "Please stop." The sanctuary door exploded inward. But it wasn't his parents. 3 figures in black armor stood in the doorway, green runes glowing on their chests. Blood-bound assassins. They'd bypassed the main battle, used blood magic to corrode a hidden passage directly to the sanctuary. The lead assassin smiled. "The cursed prince. Lord Keaton will reward us well for your head." Elian backed away, his legs buckling. He fell hard. The assassins advanced. Then the corridor behind them erupted in violence. Mara crashed into them like a hurricane. She'd felt it, some maternal instinct screaming that Elian was in danger. She'd abandoned the eastern wall, sprinted through the citadel, arrived just in time. Her blades moved faster than human eyes could follow. The first assassin's head left his shoulders. The second lost his sword arm before her boot caved in his chest. The third got past her guard and lunged for Elian. Mara's hand shot out, but she was too far away. The assassin froze mid-stride. Mara froze too, shocked. Elian had raised his small hand, and crimson energy, the same energy as his father's, crackled around his fingers. Weak, unfocused, but undeniably there. The assassin was suspended in the air, held by raw power leaking from the 10-year-old boy. "Don't touch me," Elian said through gritted teeth. Then the energy exploded. The assassin disintegrated. The blast threw Mara backward. The sanctuary walls cracked further. Elian collapsed, gasping, blood trickling from his nose. The effort had nearly torn him apart from the inside. Mara crawled to him, pulling him into her arms. "Elian, what were you thinking?" "He was going to hurt you," Elian whispered. Mara held him tighter, and something broke inside her. Not the memory blocks, those were already shattered. Something deeper. 10 years of fear and submission, of believing she was powerless, of accepting that her son was broken and there was nothing she could do. She remembered now. All of it. She remembered being a warrior princess before she was a queen. Remembered commanding armies, fighting beside the vampire king in wars that shaped the kingdom. Remembered the pregnancy, the joy, the terror when Keaton's forces attacked. Remembered the dark magic hitting her, the sensation of her identity being ripped away, the last conscious thought before everything went blank, protect the child. And she had. Even with no memory of who she was, even believing herself a lowly servant, she'd protected Elian. Fought for him. Sacrificed for him. "I remember," she breathed. "I remember everything." The dragon blood seal on her arm blazed bright red. Not the faint glow from before. True power, fully awakened. She stood, settling Elian gently against the wall. "Stay here." "Mom." I said stay here. More bloodbound were coming down the corridor. A dozen at least. They saw her standing alone and smiled. Mara smiled back. It was not a kind smile. "I am Mara Nightborn," she said quietly. "Warrior princess of the southern clans. Consort to the vampire king. Mother of the air." Her blades ignited with crimson fire. "And you made a fatal mistake coming for my son." She moved. The corridor became a slaughterhouse. Mara fought with the skill of centuries, every technique flooding back as if she'd never stopped training. The bloodbound tried to overwhelm her with numbers, but she was everywhere and nowhere, a dancer of death. Within minutes, it was over. Mara stood among the bodies, breathing hard, covered in blood that wasn't hers. She looked back at Elian. Her son stared at her with wide eyes. "You're amazing." I'm a mother, Mara said. We're all amazing when it comes to protecting our children. She moved to pick him up, but footsteps echoed from both ends of the corridor. They were surrounded. Mara positioned herself in front of Elian, blades ready. Whatever happens, stay behind me. There are too many. I don't care. The bloodbound closed in from both sides. Mara raised her blades, prepared to fight until her last breath. Then the Vampire King arrived. The Vampire King materialized in the corridor like vengeance incarnate. Crimson energy radiated from him in waves, so powerful it cracked the marble beneath his feet. The bloodbound attacking Mara stumbled back. You dare, the Vampire King said, his voice dropping to something inhuman, threaten my family? He raised both hands. The dragon blood seals on his palms blazed like twin suns. The resulting explosion of power vaporized half the attackers instantly. The others fled screaming. The Vampire King let them run. They'd spread word of what happened to those who came for his son. He turned to Mara, his expression softening fractionally. You left your post. They got through to Elian. She gestured at the destroyed sanctuary door. Someone told them exactly where to look. A spy in the citadel. The Vampire King's eyes blazed brighter. We'll burn them out later. Right now. A slow clap echoed through the corridor. Everyone turned. Keaton stood at the far end, his corrupted seal glowing green. He looked like a twisted mirror of the Vampire King, same silver hair, same sharp features, but where his brother was cold beauty, Keaton was rot and ruin. His skin had a sickly pallor, his eyes were acid green, and dark veins crawled up his neck. Brother, Keaton said. How touching. The lost family reunited. His gaze fell on Elian. And the cursed child still lives. Impressive. I designed that curse to be especially painful. Mara moved protectively in front of Elian. The Vampire King stepped forward, placing himself between Keaton and his family. You've lost, the Vampire King said. Your army is scattered. Your assassins are dead. Leave now, and I might let you return to the wastelands. Keaton laughed. Lost? Brother, I've already won. I just needed to get you all in one place. He raised his hand. The corrupted seal pulsed, and the entire corridor lit up with sickly green runes, a trap, carved into the stone over months by his spy, activated now. The runes began draining energy. The Vampire King staggered as his power was siphoned away. Mara gasped as the dragon blood seal on her arm started to burn. Blood magic, the Vampire King gritted out. You're cannibalizing the royal seals. I'm reclaiming what should have been mine. Keaton advanced. Father chose you. The kingdom chose you. Even when I tried to take the throne, the seals rejected me, corrupted my power. He drew a black blade. So if I can't have the true power, I'll destroy everyone who can. He lunged at the Vampire King. They clashed in the center of the corridor, blade against magic, brother against brother. The Vampire King was stronger, but the draining runes sapped his strength. Keaton pressed the advantage, driving him back. Mara tried to intervene, but the runes held her frozen. She could only watch as Keaton's blade sliced across the Vampire King's chest, drawing royal blood. Father! Elian screamed. The Vampire King fell to one knee. Keaton raised his blade for the killing blow. Any last words, brother? The Vampire King looked past him, to where Elian stood. Their eyes met. And the Vampire King smiled. Yes. Never underestimate my son. Keaton turned. Elian had stepped out from behind his mother. His small hands were raised, and between them, a sphere of crimson energy was forming. Not the weak flicker from before. True power. Massive power. The crushing pressure in his legs, the constant pain he'd endured for 10 years, it was all magic desperately trying to suppress itself to keep from destroying his mortal form. But Elian wasn't suppressing it anymore. He was letting it out. You hurt my mother, Elian said, his voice echoing strangely as power flooded through him. You hurt my father. You cursed me before I was even born. The red orb grew larger, brighter. The toy truck at Elian's feet began to levitate, caught in the energy field. "You're a child," Keaton snarled. "You don't have the control." "I don't need control," Elian interrupted. "I just need to let go." The orb exploded. Not outward, inward. All that power, all that energy that had been crushing Elian's body reversed. Instead of pushing out, it pulled in, condensed, refined. The magic that had been his curse became his weapon. Elian's legs straightened. The constant tremor stopped. He stood tall for the first time in his life. And in his hands, the red orb condensed into something new, a sphere of pure dragon fire, the ancient power of the royal bloodline manifesting in its truest form. Keaton's eyes widened. Impossible. Elian thrust his hands forward. The dragon fire consumed everything. Keaton screamed as the flames engulfed him. The corrupted seal on his palm tried to absorb the energy and shattered instead. His dark magic unraveled. His stolen power burned away. When the flames cleared, Keaton was gone. Only ash remained. The draining runes went dark. The curse lifted. Elian stood in the center of the corridor, breathing hard, no longer limping. The magic that had crippled him now flowed freely, finally in balance with his body. His toy truck clattered to the ground, one more wheel missing from the blast. The Vampire King rose and crossed to his son. He knelt before him, placing a hand on Elian's shoulder. "Are you hurt?" Elian shook his head. "I don't hurt anymore. The crushing feeling is gone." He looked down at his legs in wonder. "I can stand." Mara joined them, pulling Elian into a fierce embrace. "You saved us." "We saved each other," Elian said softly. The Vampire King wrapped his arms around both of them, his family, finally whole. Outside, the remaining bloodbound forces felt their master's death. Without Keaton's magic controlling them, they collapsed or fled. The siege ended as quickly as it had begun. The citadel's wards stopped flickering. The ancient stones began repairing themselves, responding to the presence of the complete royal family. In the ruins of the corridor, the three of them held each other as dawn broke through the shattered windows. Elian bent down and picked up his toy truck. 3 wheels now instead of 2. Still broken. "Do you still want it?" he asked his father. The Vampire King took the battered toy and placed it carefully in his pocket. "Always. It reminds me that broken things can still be precious." "We're not broken anymore," Elian said. "No," the Vampire King agreed, looking at his wife and son. "We're not." They had won. The curse was broken, the villain was vanquished, and a family was whole again. What an incredible journey. We bring you epic stories like this every single week, so if you want to make sure you never miss a moment of the magic, hit that subscribe button and become part of the adventure. 3 months later, the throne room was rebuilt. The Vampire King sat on his throne with Mara at his right hand, wearing her crown. Elian stood between them, practicing the combat forms his mother taught him daily. On the armrest of the throne, carefully preserved in a glass case, sat an orange and black toy truck missing 2 wheels. A reminder of where they'd been. And proof that even the most broken things could carry the weight of kingdoms.